2 weeks ago, we reported that the Canon EOS R1 would be announced alongside the Canon EOS R5 Mark II on July the 17th. But before we get to the details, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, helps this channel grow, and keeps you up to date on the latest camera coverage. Thanks to Canon Rumors, we have some new additional specifications for the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, although these haven't been validated at this point. Now I want to take you back a couple of months ago because we were the first to report or confirm that the Canon EOS R5 Mark II would indeed have a 45 megapixel sensor. Now Canon Rumors had said it was going to be a 45 megapixel sensor, but they weren't sure if it was going to be stacked or not. Well, as you've been following this channel for a while, you're probably aware that we said that not only is this going to be a 45 megapixel stacked full frame sensor, but it's going to have a completely new redesigned sensor. And that'll be, well, the reason why will be clear as we start to talk about the autofocus capabilities later on in this video. So this new stacked full frame sensor had many people wondering if indeed this would improve dynamic range and by how much. And well, according to Canon Rumors, the dynamic range of the Canon EOS R5 Mark II is supposed to push 16 stops. Now again, when we talk about dynamic range, what a camera manufacturer states quite often can be different, and when we say different, a little bit less than what we actually get real world. But still, 16 stops of dynamic range, that's definitely an improvement over the Mark I. The display resolution of the LCD is expected to double from 2.1 million dots to a staggering 4.2 million dots, and the EVF, well, it's going to increase the resolution and have a completely new design, likely due to the improvements of getting that eye-controlled autofocus that we saw in the Canon EOS R3 when it was introduced several years ago. But one of the big improvements to the EVF, at least according to Canon Rumors, is, well, it's going to be capable of -8 EV. And if it can do -8 EV with the autofocus system humming along perfectly, that's going to be a huge improvement over the Mark I, enough to get many people, especially shooting in low light conditions, to definitely want to buy this camera. Now I've shot in low light conditions like Halloween, shooting with the 50mm f1.2. As you can see here, the autofocus does quite well, but when we push the ISO to something like 6,000 or 12,000 at -3 EV, it doesn't do nearly as well. And that in-body image stabilization, well, it's supposed to get some performance modes. I hope that one of the improvements to the IBIS system is that when it comes to that IBIS wobble, they've found a way to eliminate it. And this can be a problem that we see in other cameras when shooting at 24mm, 35mm, 30mm, or anything basically under 35mm, is the sensor can tend to wobble. Now, there are ways to minimize this, and that's something that Sony has done. You can minimize the wobble by, well, maybe tapering down the IBIS system, the in-body stabilization system. And the funny thing about shooting very well at wide at 24mm is that generally you don't have to work as hard to stabilize the footage. So it would be really nice if the R5 Mark II in their IBIS performance upgrades, that it gets the ability to, well, eliminate that wobble, or at least make it so it's not perceptible. Unlike, as you can see here in this video clip as I'm going up Grouse Mountain in Vancouver, the IBIS wobble is pretty bad. So bad that I wish I could have reshot this footage. More good news for photographers is that the maximum shutter speed is going to go beyond 1/8,000th of a second. We don't know how far, we don't know if it's going to be 1/16,000th of a second, but I don't think we're going to see anything crazy like 1/80,000th of a second. And when you're shooting, you're going to be able to shoot through the EVF, and it's going to be blackout free. One of the features that the Mark I got in a firmware update is pixel shift, but it left many disappointed in that it was rather limited. It only did JPEG, and it didn't really account for movement in any way whatsoever. So basically you were limited to product and food photography, where you had the camera mounted on a tripod. And it had to be a very good tripod, because when you're doing pixel shift, any slight movement, even in the ground or you walking around, will create a blurry image. Unlike the Sony A7 R5, which can even deal with moving subjects such as this car. Well, Canon Rumors does say that the R5 Mark II will get a better implementation of pixel shift, and that's something we're all looking forward to. Canon Rumors had previously reported that the R5 Mark II will be capable of 8K video up to 60 frames per second, and we expect that to be 8K RAW up to 60 frames per second. But they did report that shooting at 8K 60 would have a couple of caveats, or I should say have some caveats, and we have an idea of what two of those caveats could be. One of those caveats might be that the R5 Mark II might be required to have Canon's new cooling battery grip. You recall that we talked about this along with Canon's patent application of their first heat pipe based cooling system ever to go in a 5 series camera. Any cameras that can do 1080 or 960 frames per second in 4K, one of the problems that we have is, well, the lack of detail. Things become blurry to the point where it's not useful. And sure, it would be nice to have 1080 or 960 frames per second, or even 480 frames per second in 1080 or even 720, but I think the lack of detail renders those useless, at least in a 5 series camera. 480, I think, would be at the very limitation of what's possible, but we'll just have to wait and see. The R5 Mark I is capable of shooting 12 frames per second mechanical and 20 frames per second electronic. The R5 Mark II, well, it's going to get an improvement. Not in the mechanical side, but it's still a mechanical capable shooting camera, but an electronic going from 20 frames per second to 30 frames per second. And there are some other interesting capabilities. The R5 Mark II will have some illuminated buttons. And for card slots, for those of you hoping to have dual CF Express Type B card slots, well, here we are about a week before the announcement, and Canon Rumors is doubling down, confirming, and we expected the same. We've been predicting that it's going to have a single CF Express Type B card slot, like, well, its predecessor, and a UHS 2 card slot. Now, there is one possibility that the R5 Mark II would be capable of supporting Gen 4 cards. Now, Gen 3 cards capable, or not capable, but supported with the R5 Mark I, they had a maximum real-world write speed, sustained write speed of around 1.5 gigabytes per second. The R5 Mark II, if it does support Gen 4, could double that, and it would also double the read speed. Now, for a lot of us, well, for all of us, there's nothing in this camera that requires Gen 4. Nothing in video specs, nothing in stills capabilities. However, when it comes to getting content off your camera a little quicker, well, that's where this really benefits. But again, you have to have a top-end computer that connects directly to the bus with 2 PCIe lanes to be able to take advantage of that. Because if you don't, if there's a bottleneck anywhere in that process, you're not going to benefit from Gen 4. So for some of you that are really that have a very high performance workflow, you could benefit from Gen 4 if it's supported. But if it's not, I wouldn't be disappointed in any way whatsoever. The R5 Mark II will have a slightly heavier body, and it will also have increased battery performance. But we don't know if this increased battery performance is a result of a whole new battery design. Now, with the R5 Mark I, well, this is its battery. It's a LPE6NH battery. It's exactly the same as, do I have one here? Yep. This is the battery for the Canon 70D. They're the exact same size, same form factor, but this packs, well, a bigger punch. Canon Rumors doesn't think that we're going to get a huge perceptible performance improvement, but this is where it comes to that second caveat I was talking about earlier in this video, when it comes to the 8K at 60 frames per second. You recall that the Canon EOS R5C is capable of shooting 8K video up to 60 frames per second, but one of the caveats for that camera is it can only deliver 8K 60 with an external power supply. So could this be one of those caveats that is tied to 8K 60? Well, it certainly makes sense. It's certainly plausible. But Canon could have improved the battery performance of this, providing it with more amperage, providing it with the ability to keep shooting 8K 60 on a single battery, not using external power, and to be able to do so past 50%. Because one of the things I've noticed when shooting with the Canon EOS R5 Mark I is once the battery drops below 50%, performance is affected. And when we hear about 12 frames per second mechanical, 20 frames per second electronic, there's a bit of a caveat there too, that it's based on a full battery, not a battery that's partially depleted. Now let's turn our attention to the autofocus system. I've reported over the past 3 to 6 months of many improvements to the autofocus system when it comes to subject and object tracking. The ability to track a subject or an object, whether that subject moves temporarily out of the frame, or to be able to track, and this is something that the R1 is supposed to be getting according to a press release by Canon Rumors. Imagine tracking, let's use a basketball game. Whoever has the ball, the autofocus system supposedly is able to lock onto the face of the person with the ball. And that's really significant, especially for sports like basketball or soccer. And this is credited to the advancements in the development of machine learning, greatly improving subject and object tracking. And this is also thanks to that whole new sensor design. Oh, and one more thing, and this is a big one, especially for video shooters. Well, not just video shooters, anybody that's going to take advantage of that HDMI port. The Mark I had a micro HDMI port, and I had said all along, look, I'd be even happy with a mini HDMI port. But thanks to Canon Rumors in their update, although this information has not been validated at this point, we are getting a full-size HDMI port, and that's really big news. So I'm really excited by this camera. And we've also got an update on the shipping date, the pricing, and announcement date. Well, we've already let the cat out of the bag talking about the announcement date. It is going to be on July the 17th, and we were the very first to report that. And that's one of the reasons why, for the better part of this video, I've had the smart pre-order links in the description down below, these guys right here. Now, right now, if you copy these down, bookmark them in your browser, all you're going to see is basically information about the Canon EOS R5 Mark I. These smart pre-order links, I call them smart pre-order links for a very simple reason. When Canon announces the R5 Mark II, they'll likely announce body alone, and they might do a kit package with the, well, 24-105 f, not 2.8, but f4. They've done this in the past. They could offer multiple kit packages, but we don't expect more than 2. And then when it comes to Adorama and B&H, they will likely package up the R5 body alone with other kits that they are offering themselves on multiple lenses. And sometimes they give you the option of up to 3 or 4 different lenses. Sometimes they give you the options of a camera bag, free storage. And Adorama for the longest time has been offering the R5 Mark II at $29.99 and also throwing in a SanDisk CF Express Type B card along with a card reader. So go ahead and copy down these smart pre-order links, put them in your browser, bookmark them, because the R5 Mark II, based on these specifications, it's going to sell out very, very quickly. And if you're still on the fence, I would recommend going ahead and pre-ordering at your favorite retailer for one very simple reason. The R5 Mark II isn't going to start shipping until August. That's right, it's now August. It was September according to one of my sources, but now we're hearing August. And if that's the case, it's going to give you several weeks to watch all the review videos about the R5 Mark II, read through Canon specifications and other documentation to determine if this camera is good enough for you to pull the trigger, if it's going to provide an improvement to your workflow. And if that's the case, then yes, stick with your pre-order. And if not, well, you can go ahead and cancel your pre-order without any consequences. And the benefit of pre-ordering without knowing 100% for sure is that after watching all the reviews and all that information, doing your research, if you then decide, yeah, I really do want this camera, because you pre-ordered, you're much further ahead in the queue. I don't know how long it's going to take to get this camera. For many of us, we will get it on the first shipping batch. We'll get it probably in August. But for the rest of us, well, look at this 200 to 800 millimeter. People who pre-ordered that back in November of 2023, last year, some 6-7 months ago, they still don't have the lens. So there are some supply shortages, and I know it's frustration. That's one of the reasons I have the smart pre-order links in the description down below. Now, a small caveat, I do get a small commission back, but it doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to put in any codes, fill out any forms. I just want to say, for those of you that do use the smart pre-order links, thank you so much. It's one of the reasons why this channel is as big as it is today, even with only 52,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. It really does help this channel grow. It's very much appreciated. But there is one other thing I want to do to ring in the R5 Mark II. I'm going to do a live stream. We're going to start coverage some 60 to 90 minutes before the actual Canon announcement. Now, we don't know the time of the announcement just yet, but we do know it's going to be on July the 17th. Will it be Canon USA doing it at 10 a.m. in the morning? Well, that's my bet right now, but they could surprise us with 9 a.m., 8 a.m., or the dreaded 11 p.m. at night. We'll just have to wait and see. Once we get the confirmation, I'll I'll schedule a live stream to provide live coverage with my expert panel. We're going to have people that are Canon 1DX Mark III shooters, R3 shooters, and R5 shooters. We're going to have Nikon shooters and maybe even a Sony shooter to talk about the latest leaked specifications, what we would expect to see in the R1 and the R5 Mark II, and then we're going to cover the announcement live, because we're supposed to be getting not one, but two big cameras. The R1, Canon's flagship mirrorless camera, that's going to be an impressive camera to a select few, and then there's the R5 Mark II, which will be the largest selling camera of the year for Canon, and the R5 Mark II is going to provide them with a significant revenue source to give them a very big 2024. So join me for that event. I will let you know as soon as I have the event scheduled. I'm hoping with July the 17th, less than a week away, we should probably have some sort of tweet from Canon. Remember the R1? They gave us this little teaser video not too long ago saying it's coming soon. Well, we know now that that event is coming soon, so Canon, come on, give us the time. We know you're going to do it. You're letting us know it's coming soon. Everybody's talking about July the 17th. And maybe you want to throw in a wrench to show how wrong we are and make it on July the 16th. We're fine with that. Just let us know what the time is, because we're excited about, we're excited about this camera and we can't wait to cover it. Now, have I left anything out? Is there anything I haven't mentioned? Oh, well, you know what? There is one thing. For that fear of missing out, even though the Canon EOS R5 Mark I is 4 years old, it's still one of the most impressive cameras out there. It doesn't have a stacked sensor, but it can do 12 frames per second mechanical, 20 frames per second electronic, 8K video up to 30 frames per second raw. So it's $29.99 at Adorama and B&H and your favorite camera store. And one thing I do want to mention, sorry, I got a slight itch here. I appreciate everybody using my affiliate links for Adorama B&H, but you might also want to consider your local camera store. And if you're looking at purchasing in Canada, I highly recommend buying locally, because you got to be careful with gray market. I believe that if you buy from the United States and it gets shipped into Canada, you're still covered under warranty, because Canon Canada reports to Canon USA, but you might want to confirm that. But if you're not from Canada, or actually if you are from Canada, let me cover that off first. In the description down below, I have the contact information from from Patrick at Downtown Camera, and he's been incredible for me supporting this channel since I first started. And if you mention my name, don't be surprised if he shaves a little bit off the price, whether it's a new lens, a new camera body, or something that's a little bit old or used. He's always sharpened his pencil for me, and he's told me he'll sharpen his pencil for you a little bit, so give him a shout. But for those of you outside of Canada, or outside of the United States, New Zealand, if you're in Europe, Australia, do consider reaching out to your local camera store. They really appreciate your business. And I'm not saying all of them are great, but a lot of them really are. They value your business. And unlike Adorama and B&H, they don't have these convoluted, well, I shouldn't say convoluted, they don't have these really big pre-order systems that you have to wait until the camera's announced a pre-order. A lot of them just use a simple notepad, their phone, or a spreadsheet. So if you want to go ahead and pre-order through your local camera store, reach out to them. And the only caution I would have anybody who's saying, well, I want you to pay in full or half the price, I wouldn't do that, because most reputable camera retailers won't require a deposit. Some might do $50 or $100, but with the popularity of these cameras, they don't have to worry about the camera sitting on the shelf. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to stay up to date on the latest and greatest, then go ahead and subscribe and choose all notifications. And don't forget to follow me on X. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you again soon.